back to Wednesday night sessions through KickstART Farmington. I am, as always, your host, Mitch Nobis. For the regular viewer, I always like to kind of make jokes. You can tell when we're recording in the day because I'm in my Zoom classroom with the very exciting blank wall versus the ones at night that are recorded in our basement office transformed toy storage room, which is a little bit more colorful. Got the boring version today, but better lighting. I am excited. Today joining us is Detroit writer Nandi Comer. I've been looking forward to this one. She has a new book out called Tapping Out. Obviously, I'll let her tell you all a little bit more about that. And in the future, when we can all actually be in rooms again together, we're hoping to have Nandi come to a live reading in Farmington. For those of you who've been watching all of these episodes, a few of you have even been to the in-person versions of these that we used to and will again in the future hold in downtown Farmington at the KickstART gallery space on Grand River Avenue. For those of you who are locals, they are open, mask up, and go support local arts. Speaking of local arts, one cool thing about Nandi, our guest today, is that she is a recipient of the Kresge Arts Fellowship, and please correct me if I'm getting the wording wrong there. But this is a very cool local arts organization. Many things in Michigan are supported with the name Kresge on them. We've got some, good benefactors out there from the Kresge family going back a ways. And there is a very, just a very cool local fellowship. So if you are a local artist, Metro Detroit area, I think you have to be the Tri-County area, right? That's a thing to look out for. This particular episode will post after the deadline for this year, but the deadlines are always in January. So any local artists watching this, if you've never looked into the Kresges before, check them out. At this point, I am going to hand things over to Nandi. Nandi, thank you very much for joining us today, and take it away.
Thank you so much for inviting me here. This has been a really different kind of experience this year, and I'm really excited that we have had these opportunities to really share and reach out to each other and be able to just share our work. So I am going to be reading from my newest publication. It's called Tapping Out. There's the cover. I'm super proud of this book. It's been some work over a long period of time. And what I think is probably the most challenging thing for me about reading these poems is that they're of a different time, but they're also about a time when I could travel. And so a lot of the poems are not only about what you would think, there's a Mexican wrestler on there, but it's also about travel and about displacement. And so this is an interesting time to be reading poems about how we travel and how we get out in the world and how our bodies are seen. Before I begin, I just want to say thank you everyone for listening, and thank you everyone for tuning in. It is really important to me that people who love writing and love poetry have spaces to listen to that. So I'm just going to start off with the first poem in the book, and then I'm going to read a couple of more for you all this afternoon. So the first poem in the collection is called On Becoming a Fan. It was written probably one of the last poems that I wrote for this whole collection. And it was written because after a friend of mine had listened to some of my poems, he asked me, well, why does a girl from Detroit, why are you so obsessed with a sport like lucha libre? And so I wrote this in answer to that question, on becoming a fan. Don't blame mask, blame smoke, blame the tricky sorcery of shiny boots, capes, and props. Blame spandex's tight grip on wrestlers' thighs. When swollen biceps of masked men slap canvas, how like broken toys their bodies become, each one proffering his limbs to the other, and we, their spectators, hooked under pain's smelly spell, cannot resist wanting sweat and blood. We rouse like tiny rioters, wave our fists, curse the winner, blame the winning wrestler, how he radiates center stage, how he performs his own ascension up ropes, his thick arms hot and throbbing. Blame his left foot poised top turnbuckle. Blame his hand on waist pose or the braying crowd or the thud his leg makes as he falls, hacking down on his opponent's waiting chest. Don't blame Mask. Blame spicy pork rinds and their vendors. Blame bikini clad women with corona and tecate splayed across their asses and tits. Can boys be blamed for imitating their fathers, leaning in, praying his man clobbers the other guy? I blame a fourth grade shoving match with my sister. My forehead turned hot by an early June sun. I hadn't understood how anger, like a hot spring, boils at the belly's core until its hostile vapor clenched my fist. I never tried to weigh muscle against meat, never had to throw a punch. I blame the thin hush an audience becomes as bone tired men stumble into their musty dressing rooms, how their faces elude us each match. The windswept dirt under the feet of 10-year-old onlookers. They're cheering for my sister's grip. Blame the swirl marble buttons of our school uniforms, the impossibly long wait for recess. Blame the purple blooming bruise sketched at the brushstroke of her hands. I have not thrown a punch since. I wish I had bright, sparkling fabric hidden under my dress shirt. Blame the seams of a practice persona into which we've all neatly wrapped our arms. Blame the seamstress who sewed this mask and cut all the loose threads. This arena is a site for unveiling, my locale for loosening the strings. So, this book centers on a lot of my time and when I was in living in Guadalajara, Mexico, and it also centers on the a couple of uh, experiences that I've had around the world, um, and but it also talks about wrestling. So there's a lot of language around masking and myths and seeing your heroes, and so I want to share with you a poem that is not as, is more about Detroit first, so that y'all get a kind of a introduction of other work. So, and this is, since this is a local reading series, I just wanted to share that with you all. Detroit, Llorona, my heart, my city. Another ripped night, another dank song, another bloated head of headline child bobs in your river. Loaded barrel woman, pumped piston city. 7 of your boys rushed a townhouse door for jewelry, for a cable box, for a game console, tossed over kitchen tables and turned another boy's face to mush, and you've gone and given up their ghost. Singing a murderous sinfonetta, you make another girl, another son dance on the waves of your wails as if each bullet were a small celebration missile. I know this lost love luck is not your fault. You do not mean to change a father's body to canopy and shield into a dead weight your daughter will tuck herself under until your singing is done. But I've watched you strained with moan and hymn. Your living room floor scattered with obituary flaking faces. I've seen your organ arms frantic wave, the length of your fingers curved around carnation stems. Each night, your skin twists morn to morn. Beating chest woman, yours is a solitary grief whose wailing provokes the next hand hooked to an infant throat. Weeping woman, foolish mother. I've tried to sing your praise song, but each of your river drowned children is a clang chord in my throat. Don't stay, you warn. You refuse to protect me. Still, I drag myself to you, kneel and kiss your early asphalt knees. No one knows your grieving songs, our love of graveyard strolls. If only to fondle the fringes of small caskets, I come back, I retreat, I come back, I retreat. So I think I'm going to read another wrestling poem. I'm really proud of being able to make certain connections with visual artists as well. The cover was done by Chihuahuense artist Miguel Villaverde. And when he found out that I was a fan, he created the cover, an original cover. And then in the inside, he gifted me some drawings of some wrestling moves. And so there are some visuals in there for people too when they get to see, when they get to look through the piece. And so I'm going to read a piece that is a term that is also defined in the collection, la base, or the base. It's a term that people use, mainly wrestlers, because wrestling is kind of a fixed thing. There are some kind of spaces and moves that need to be really foundational in order for wrestlers not to get hurt. And so the base, or the receiver, of an aerial power move is what this poem is named after. And after one's opponent has already jumped, la base must remain in place in order to accept the blow. Otherwise, la base risk injuries to their opponent and or oneself. La base. A few seconds until the end, and I am hunched and breathless, an aching ball of body kneeling center ring. The arena is all sneers and whistles while the other guy scales ropes. With each of his steps, the turnbuckles creaking warns me to untangle my legs, to get up and steady my frame. I know the only thing to do is wait. His arms will come down in an axe or maybe a suicide bomb. It doesn't matter the move. He will somersault all of his weight onto me, and I will shape his descent. A flight must have a place to land, two sore arms to catch and cradle him, another body to fall into. When he turns through the air and everything rushes past his mask, I am the hinge, his net. So I'd like to read a poem that is a little bit more playful. The book has a lot of Spanish words, mainly because I am pretty much bilingual. I claim to be bilingual. Sometimes I don't claim to be bilingual, but today, let's just say I'm bilingual. And so I've been learning Spanish since I was 5 years old, before I started to travel. And it wasn't until later that I started to travel to places where I could actually be immersed in the language that I had had on me from being in a bilingual school in Detroit. And so the thing this poem is just, I realized as I was writing these poems about traveling that oftentimes I would talk about the tongue would show up in the poems. So I decided to write a poem directly to the tongue. Ode to the tongue. Click, twist, flutter. Once again, you stick a tepid tile sound in my mouth. We are in a cafe, in a hotel, in a store, trying to order coffee or cookies, and there you go. The long U of you in my lap. I am a fractured figurine. Language is made of spackled sounds flitting past my eyes. We play naming games. Guess each mouth-shaped word made soft in their lips. What you call imitation is a clinging arrest, a sour misuse of the throat. I trip over syllables. I feel sweat trickle between my breasts. Let these faraway words lie like fuzz on my teeth. Tongue. Have you noticed how troubled you've become? I cannot maneuver conversation without you slipping out of place. You twist around like a trapped bull. I have tried to force you out of your silent ending. We are native. We are native to people who can't stop speaking foreign languages. There is no space for timidness, tongue. Loop into the long word like lung. Lay the lengthy trills on the backside of paladar. At times, at some tables, tongue and language are the same. Don't bother translating decorum. Each country sets with its own formal address and common clatter a shock on the mouth. In this mouth, let's send a curled G galloping across some desert with the rolling R's rolling ribbon heart. And then I'll end with the last poem, Losing the Mask. It is the last poem in the collection. And it is done in two voices, two parts, two voices. The first is the voice of the fighter, El Luchador, which is the first section is titled El Luchador, and the second section is in the voice of La Máscara. And so I wanted to just tell the story of how someone loses their mask in Lucha Libre. Losing the mask. One, El Luchador. When the laces loosened and gave a cool air and calm hit my face, the rings, gas clogged my ears, not silent, not chaos. It was as if I mangled my hand on a job. I lost my face, placed my creased grin into my audience's palms. Losing my mask was like having my torso ripped out. Then I offered it, still trembling, to the winner, my face, my exposed veins pumping over my forehead. I was no lazy factory worker losing my thumb under a negligent power saw, not a chef cutting too quickly at a raw carrot. I lost. I put on a good face, my face, dragged the rest of my body through the arena, through warm black halls to my locker, pulled my arms into my shirt and tugged at the buckle of my belt, dressed my body in plain clothes. I broke. Two, La Máscara. Before I let go, before they part me open, before they pull you head first out of me and hand me over to a man who will take me and hang me, before I become a sparkling medallion, a memory, a relic, a slaughter, you have got to loosen all the strings. You will always have hair, boots, and tape. In a year, you can go to a mall or grocery store. You can walk through the dust of a market and everyone will know the bottom lip and callous forehead I have kept so long inside. Mijo, before I let go of your face, someone will have to rip me apart. Thank you.
Nandi, that was incredible. Thank you so much. I also am a big music fan, and oftentimes I watch or listen to a reading and I think about like the selections. It's like making a set list for a concert, and that was a great set list.
Oh, thank you.
I also really love the way your work plays with sound. Like there's so much rhythm and like repeated sounds, and just a joy to listen to. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right. So at this point in the show, we always do a quick 2-question interview. The first one is usually about craft, and I'm really intrigued. I do some writing also, and I think most writers, we tend to be intrigued by what we can't do. And so I'm intrigued by your book having kind of a central focus and like the masks as metaphor, but it is all still connected to wrestling in some way. So I'm curious, while you were working on this, kind of tell us about your process, I guess. Like, did you write stuff that you kind of held back for a future project, or did everything you write while you were working on what became Tapping Out end up kind of finding its way into the theme anyways? Does that make sense? Did everything kind of funnel into that same sort of vibe or focus, or did you kind of hold back other things like, no, this isn't for the wrestling book, this is something else?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm always writing. And so I can't say that I do know what my central project is, but I'm not always only working on that. Sometimes you have to put things away. I want to say the first thing that happened was that I was trying to write to this experience I felt around like anti-Blackness when being abroad, and feeling very much all these conflicts of having the kind of privilege of being able to go into other countries and experience other cultures, while also still being a subject of exoticization, because I was like the only Black person for miles, or there were some preconceived notions about my personality based on like media representations of Blackness. And so I was trying to write about that, and I felt so like I was trying to write poetry, and I was trying to figure out how to tell these stories. And a lot of those poems were really bad. So if those are poems that didn't make it in the collection, a lot of those poems didn't make it in the collection. Just because they weren't doing what I wanted to do. And then like with any collection, you probably write thousands of more words than what you actually get and what you can actually get into a book after your editor, you as an editor, your friends read it. You're like, maybe this doesn't work. Yeah. And so there is that. But then what happened was, as I was writing these bad poems, I also I went to a fellowship, and I met a poet named Brenda Cardenas, and she was wearing a bracelet that had all these wrestler images on them. And I was just like really taken by it, because I hadn't seen anything since I had left Guadalajara. I'd been living in Guadalajara for a couple of years. And so she was wearing this bracelet, and she was like, why do you know what this is? Yeah. And I was telling her about my experiences going to the matches, and she was like, why don't you just write about that? And I hadn't thought about it, and I was actually afraid to do it, because I am not a wrestler. I am not Mexican. I am this, like I said, a girl from Detroit who really found this fandom. And I guess I needed somebody like Brenda to give me permission to try to interrogate this, like to just write about that. And as I was just like, I'm just going to write a scene, or I'm just going to write towards an experience that I've had, I started to find language to talk about this other thing that I had wanted to write about. And I think those poems became much more interesting once I understood like that there was struggle, that was literally wrestling with these topics, and that there was language that I could borrow from in order to talk about what I was experiencing. And there are some joys in that too. And so, but then there are also poems that are just like they're just outliers. They're just because the masking became a thing. There are a lot of persona poems in the poem, and then there's a tribute to one of my one of my favorite poets, I.E., who used persona all the time. So I felt when I was writing, I was just writing poems, and then when that poem came up, I said, well, why can't this poem belong in a book about masking, about wrestling with identity? And so I don't know that but there were definitely, there was a time that I wrote a series of poems about a travel writer who was traveling through China. None of those poems made it into the collection. So it's okay. It was okay for me to do that writing, and that's fine. And I don't think those poems will ever get published, but I did it. It happened, and I wrote other poems. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I thank you for that. I think I need to remember that myself, because like I said when I introed the question, like I'm fascinated by that, because I don't think I can do that. Like I don't have a central focus, I feel like oftentimes, but it's a good reminder that you end up with a central focus if you write enough. Yeah,
and I don't know. So this is my first full-length collection, and then I also published a chapbook, and they came about very differently. I also thought I was writing another book when I first started tapping out. I thought I was at the time, I thought I was much more interested in writing about experiences of the recession. So also, your topic can come you know, you might just be writing about something and then you write enough poems to have a collection. I'm not saying that I never set out to like write, I don't set out to write books. I set out to write poems.
Right.
And then I'm like, wow, you got 20 pages. Maybe you should think about focusing on this a little bit more.
No, that totally makes sense. I mean, it's the process, right? The process over product, as the teaching goes. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Thank you. So the second question, the slightly goofier one, I should have written it down. I think it was like the fourth poem you read. I'm glad you read the one about the bass. I actually have a friend, one of my oldest friends, used to work for, I guess it was WWF back then. He was like, he was the webmaster back when we didn't have webmasters. Like he actually got to go to like the pay-per-view events, and like, I'm not exactly sure what he somehow got the links up on their website back in like 98 when websites were a fascinating, shiny tool. Anyways, he would hang out with these
creators.
yeah. Now we all do it, right? But he got to hang out with these guys, and he has all these great stories. And the bass was a thing. The whole athleticism of it really stuck with me. He actually tried to recruit me. You can't tell on the computer, but I'm 6'3" and 200 something pounds. So like I just barely fit the target demographic. And he's like, you should quit teaching and come be wrestling. Boss, I pull muscles like walking to my classroom. So like, that's not going to happen. But I did get to learn a little bit about the background of it. And I thought that was just really cool. Like there's a school you go to for the WWF anyways, you know, like Atlanta is based in Atlantis. Like you have to go get trained and on all the moves. So to the question, if you did do all that and you were a luchador, what would be your signature move?
Oh, so that's a tough one, because I think I would definitely be, I think the women in the ring have a very different kind of role than like men. And I think it would just first depend on what family I'm in, depend on what, like, it would be a lot. It would have to be a lot. But I think I would want to be silly no matter what it is. So there are wrestlers who have these signature moves that really don't cause any kind of pain. There's this one older wrestler, he goes by Porgy, and he will like sit on people because he's just so huge, and that's like the joke of it all, you know. But there aren't a lot of women that have like super just hilarious kind of moves out there. And I think I would probably, like, I don't know, do a booby smother, or like you know, try to figure out a way to get the crowd to laugh, but also, you know, it be like this space of like, not, I don't know if I want to humiliate people, because I'm just like, oh, but that is kind of part of it. You got to kind of humiliate people to make them feel like they're losing. But I think I also would be, I think one of the things I would really love is I would love to learn how to flip off the third rope. Like that, to me, the kind of, like when we were talking about top turnbuckle type of aerial moves, where you like have somebody, you're cradling somebody's body and taking them off the second or third rope. That's incredible. I would love to get that kind of flight. Yeah.
It's just nuts to think about, like the athleticism involved in pulling off one of those moves.
Yeah, and the kind of putting each generation kind of takes it up a notch, and to go to like see not just like someone standing in the middle of the ring, but someone standing outside of the ring and like on the floor waiting for someone to fall, like, which is literally like a story high, because they're up on the turnbuckles. It's really I just love the sport. I really love watching that athleticism and just being completely floored by the ways in which they give their bodies over to it.
Yeah, and kind of like an offensive lineman in football or something, that they can do all that while being, 6'5", 250 pounds. Like these are often just gigantic human beings. It's
it's as much rivalry is in the ring as much. There's also, we talk about the athleticism, but there's also this kind of, we're watching a Shakespearean play out, because while some people will say it's fake, but for me, it's like going to watch Cirque du Soleil. It's watching these athletes play these roles, and oftentimes it's very, while even though you have the script, it's very much improv based. So it's who's in the audience, because they're going to grab somebody from the audience. They're going to grab the beer guy. They're going to, so there are some, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, but you can't predict the individual responses, the children in the audience. And so it's a really like watching a theater troupe.
Yep.
Do improvisational theater. It's really, I enjoy it. And could you imagine going to a comedy improv place and they just like break out and started flipping all over the stage? Like, that would be amazing. So that's why I go.
Yeah, you read my mind. That's what I was gonna say. I mean, it's theater. We treat it as sport, but it's really theater.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Or I mean, we just say it's this athletic theater. And no one goes to Cirque du Soleil and go, but I mean, that's really fake though. It's like, yeah, I know, but like, it's beautiful.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Oh man. Well, on that note, Nandi, thank you again very much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. And again, when we can get back out of our houses again, we would love to have you up to Farmington to the KickstART gallery and do this again. And sooner than later, let's hope. Fingers crossed.
Thanks for inviting me. This is a lot of fun. I can't wait to see your audience in person.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. And to the regular viewers, we will see you all next time. Thanks for joining us.